Welcome to Avaya, Jolinda.
Thank you so much for having me, Andy.
Yeah, great to have you here today. And why don't you get us started with a little background? How did you get into what you do today?
Well, we only have 30 minutes, so I won't. But basically, I did my health coach certification back in 2012. And then once I started working in health coaching, I realized that I really want to support my clients, not only when it came to their eating habits, but also the emotional programming that was informing those choices. And throughout the years, I realized I really enjoyed working with hormones. And then that also changed to a hormone health specialization and then a gut health specialization. And I realized that all of the clients I was seeing also had this same constellation of symptoms related to chronic stress, hence the burnout, and me becoming more curious about that. I also trained with the Feminist Coach Academy, so I started picking apart everything from an intersectional feminist lens, and how all of this really has to do with a lot of the systems that we're under, as opposed to our individual choices within those systems. Obviously, we have to take responsibility, but when you see the same things coming up over and over again, you have to ask yourself, okay, does this really come down to the individual? And then I realized that I really enjoy working with people in midlife because as a life coach, when I did my life coach certification, like most life coaches, I love transformation and helping people to take those big leaps and see things differently. And midlife is an incredible time for that, when the hormonal veil is lifting and we're seeing things differently, and we're kind of scratching our heads and wondering what's next for me. And for a lot of my clients, they've played by all of the rules and they're ready to create their own. And they've checked everything off the list and are asking themselves, what else is there? What more is there for me? And are really ready to step into that soul's purpose. But in order to do that, we also need to have this foundation of physical health, of mental health, and of course, hormonal health. So when working with my clients, I really like to focus on the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, and hold space for them in the most holistic way possible.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate you giving us a little background, the Reader's Digest version of
Yeah.
how you got to where you are today. And all the
abridged.
yeah, abridged version, all the amazing things you're doing. So let's talk perimenopause, since that's our topic of discussion today. So when typically do you see perimenopause starting for women, and what would you say are the first symptoms people notice?
So perimenopause actually starts at 35, but a lot of us don't recognize the symptoms we're experiencing as part of perimenopause, because so many of us have been told that perimenopause has to do with hot flashes. Or now what's getting a lot of attention is, the menobelly and the weight gain. But what actually starts changing first is mood and worse symptoms of PMS. And this has to do with the decline in progesterone, because that actually starts going down first before we start seeing the surge and then the fluctuations in estrogen. So when estrogen starts to go down, that is when we are really approaching our final period. But the 10 years before that is when a lot of things are happening that are not pleasant and are very unknown to many of us because they're not so talked about. And so even though millions of us are experiencing them at any given time, we say, well, that's not something I want to share. So a lot of us are kind of walking around with perimenopause and very real perimenopause symptoms, but not realizing that that's what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so interesting to really understand that. I'm 43, and I've started having some, really my main issues were irregular periods and closer together, and yes, lower progesterone,
Yes.
and all of that. But it's funny to think back to when I was like, mid 30s. I'm like, man, I probably was, like I totally get it. Like I see like heightened anxiety and that kind of stuff, and issues with moods, and never ever considered that this could be a hormonal thing at all. So it's
Yeah.
so interesting to connect the dots.
And for those of us who do religiously track our cycles, you'll probably notice in that early phase that your cycle is still very regular, but 2 days shorter, or even 1 day shorter, which again, if you're not really strict about tracking your cycle, you're not going to think, oh, that's a change. But for some of us, that's also a clue, like, I'm still getting a period every month, but instead of 28 days, it's 26. That's kind of the mood changes. And as you mentioned, anxiety, we know that those of us who go into our 40s, who already have been diagnosed with things like depression and anxiety, will typically experience worser symptoms. But perimenopause itself isn't the cause of clinical depression or anxiety on its own. But if you already are coming into it with some of those, as I did, then you'll see most likely an uptick in those symptoms.
Yeah, interesting. And let's talk about lifestyle, because I know that obviously in what you do, you talk a lot about diet and exercise and all sorts of other things related to lifestyle. So what is one major lifestyle factor that can really contribute to the severity of a woman's symptoms during this time?
Stress.
There it is.
And I think that's one of the things that is really valuable when it comes to my work, because we so many of us are so far away from our baseline that we don't even realize that we are living in a state of chronic stress. So when I ask a lot of my clients about their stress levels, I say, no, I'm not stressed. I'm just doing this and that and this and that and all the other things, but I enjoy all of those things. That's one of the things I find my clients really blinds them to their own stress levels, is that, but I chose this. I enjoy this. This is my passion. And, obsessive passion is one of the predictors of burnout, along with fixed mindset. But we really have to look at, where is the blank space? Where is the time for meditation, for time in nature, for movement that doesn't involve punishment of our bodies? We're not working out to compensate for what we ate or because we want to lose weight, but actually tapping into what our bodies need and moving them appropriately. And the mindfulness practices, that leaving our devices and not constantly being on alert, and putting those boundaries in place so that we can have time to simply be, which for a lot of us in itself is a challenge, because we're so used to being on, that when we pull back and have that time to ourselves, we think, oh, this is uncomfortable, but that's what our bodies so desperately need. So I would say, if you are listening to this and you're still in your 30s, or you're for any age really, but especially if you are approaching perimenopause, look at your current levels of stress and how you can support yourself from a physical and emotional standpoint, because we know that the state of your thyroid is going to affect your experience of perimenopause, and the state of your adrenals. And those are two of the things that really become overtaxed in times of chronic stress.
Yeah. And so let's talk a little bit more about keeping our stress at bay. And we always like dogs to make an appearance on Avaya interviews. So it's all good.
I apologize for that.
It's all good. I have one as well right over here. So no worries. But yeah, like you talked about, obviously unplugging, let's get away from our phones. Let's stop being on all the time. Are there any other practices that you recommend to keep that stress at bay?
I think one of the things we really take for granted is the power of our breath, and that's something that we can come back to at any given moment. We don't have to set aside time for it. We can simply recognize when we are moving a little too quickly, or when we feel that wave of anxiety, to simply slow down our breathing. If you want to practice an actual pattern, like box breathing, where you hold for 4, breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, and do that for a minute. That's a great way to reset the parasympathetic nervous system. Self-massage A lot of my clients are very reluctant to booking in a time for a professional massage, but just at your desk, giving yourself a lovely hand massage, or keeping an oil in your desk drawer, and when you just take a 5-minute break to give yourself a hand massage with lavender oil, for example, which is also going to, feel really nice and relaxing. Or your scalp, scalp massage can also feel really nice. Pressing your hand to your forehead and in the back of your head is another way to kind of come down as you breathe, to let your body know that it's safe. Because that's the thing, is that we can't just say, everything's okay, I'm fine. Everything's okay, I'm fine, when our body is highly activated. So breathing, the self-massage, stretching, spending time in nature. And one of the things that I love about spending time in nature, and we know that you don't even have to walk in nature, you can just sit in nature, and that can lower your stress response. But that you also become very mindful of the cycles, and you recognize that you are also part of that, and you don't always have to be in bloom, that you also have a time when, things can slow down, and you can, really be in that time of retreat, and give that to yourself so that you can come back in full force. Because rest is treated like something we need to work for, but it's not. It's a necessity. And at one point or another, we all need to slow down. We all need sleep. Sleep is another thing that really needs to be prioritized. If you want to have an easier time going through any kind of hormonal transition, you need sleep on your side. And that's one of the first things that tends to get thrown off. So again, disconnecting from your devices, practicing that sleep hygiene, sleeping in total darkness in a cool room, and not sacrificing that for anything else. Some of my clients say, well, I know I need to get my workout in, so I made sure that I woke up at 5. Like, how much sleep did you get? Well, just 5 hours, but I had to wake up at 5 or else I wouldn't get my workout. I always say, first sleep, then movement. Mm-hmm. Because sleep is going to really be the foundation of how you feel throughout the entire day. But those are some of the really basic practices, as well as gratitude. Practicing gratitude regularly. And I think that that's something that can be difficult when we're in a time such as perimenopause, where it feels like everything is feeling wrong, but coming back to what's working about your body, and also recognizing that, your body, its main goal is to support you, to come into balance. It is not intentionally trying to betray you. And that's working well. And being compassionate towards yourself throughout that process, because it is a time of a lot of uncomfortable change. And if it's your first experience with physical change like that, it can be really confronting. Mm-hmm. And just practicing kindness as much as possible.
Yeah, I love all that. Such great tips. And I think also about what you said, is we don't always have to be in bloom. I love that, because I definitely, and that we must earn our sleep or something. We have to, put in 12 hours a day or something in order to allow ourselves to go to bed. And this is like such an important piece of the puzzle. So I love that you mentioned that, in a society that tends to prioritize go, and always, doing active things. And again, like time and place for exercise. Absolutely. But without the rest, it's a little challenging for sure.
Avaya has changed my life.
Avaya has made me the woman I am today.
Avaya is my home.
Avaya is personal freedom.
Avaya is the reason my life continuously improves.
Let everyone in your life know about Avaya.
Everyone needs to know about this amazing company.
Thank you, Avaya, for appearing in my inbox.
What Ike Allen and Andy Anderson have created at Avaya is what the world needs.